Right. This afternoon, I have my no, not. I was going to say old friend, but you're not. You're
Oh,
long.
I'm nearly old.
No,
Well,
if you're
48.
old, then I'm old. So Anthony and I have known each other for we've just figured out 29 years, and we're at uni together, and have both gone on very different paths, but seem to be converging a little bit now, I think. So I've invited Anthony on this afternoon to talk to us about career change and sort of mindset shifts that are needed with that.
Mm.
So is that a fair
Yeah,
assessment
perfect.
of where we're at? So
Absolutely.
should we start with you and your story?
Yeah, so I guess my story begins, cracky, very quickly. Just a little bit before the 29 years ago that we've known each other, just to frame that for people, just so they know. And
Old.
I, yeah, so I'd left A levels and then went to university where I met you, where we became friends. We met you, and then left after 2 years of that, kind of really not knowing what I wanted to do with my life, other than I was pretty certain I didn't want to become a kind of 9 to 5 person. So I set out down a path. I set my own business up. Ran that for about 18 months, and then got really, I think I was impatient. I was frustrated, bored, impatient, and ended up quitting and went into the kind of career corporate world in public relations, really because of what somebody said to me, which was, "Oh, you'd be good at PR. You got the gift of the gab." So, and it was no more than that, because I really didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. And I fell into PR that way. So I went to ask somebody what they'd look for. They ended up giving me an interview, got the job, and the rest was history. And then I did that for about 5 years, got really fed up and bored with that. Just felt it was a bit vacuous, and ended up by fortuitous sort of set of circumstances going out to the Caribbean, as you know, to run a publishing company for an ex-girlfriend's dad. And so I did that for a few years, turned that around, came back to the UK, still didn't know really what I wanted to do, but I was newly married, and like many people, I had commitments and savings that would say that were dwindling pretty quickly, and ended up falling back into, after 9 months of struggling to find a job, ended up falling back into PR work, but this time back at the bottom of the ladder. Then over the next few years, sort of worked my way back up. Kids came along as they do, and then found myself aged 40, divorced really quickly, didn't see it coming at all, 2 kids, and divorced with 2 kids, mortgage to pay and all the rest of it. And so that was quite a challenging time. So I ended up still doing what I was doing. And then aged 41, found myself redundant. Again, quite by chance, 5 to 5. Funny enough, it was when I was working at Electricity Northwest, just down the road from you in Warwick.
Yeah, I think that was around about the time that I last physically saw you in real life.
Yeah. So and I realised at that point that actually I'd been kind of going through the motions and was pretty miserable. And so I left home that night and I was scared stiff, and I thought, how the hell am I going to pay the mortgage? What am I going to do? I've got 2 kids. What am I going to do? And so I went to bed, couldn't sleep. And I came downstairs. I remember, grabbed a glass of Jameson whiskey, sat down. I got a pen and paper, and I wrote a line down the middle. And I wrote, right, what's the worst thing that can happen? So I wrote down all the worst things that can happen. And funnily enough, 2 things happened. One was when I wrote them down, they didn't seem as scary.
Interesting.
So I thought, that was interesting. So writing them down didn't seem scary. And then the second thing, on the other side of the paper, I thought, right, what's the positive potential benefits that could come from this? So I wrote down as many different things as I could, and I refused to stop until I got twice as many positives as negatives. I ended up going back to bed and slept like a baby. And then I woke up in the morning, I realised that I've been going through the motions the last 6-7 months, really miserable. And I thought, I need to figure out what the hell it is I want to do with my life. I know I'm skint. I know I've got 2 kids and a mortgage. If I don't do it now, I'm just going to go back to doing the same thing I was. And I can't do it. So I took 2 or 3 months off, and I managed to borrow a little bit of money from my folks, and by hook or by crook, and I thought, I'll just put up some stuff on credit card. And I said, right, I'm just going to figure out what it was. So it took me about 2.5 months. And in that time, I kind of didn't do any work. I did lots of walking and thinking and trying things out, spoke to different people. And then I finally settled on, actually, what I really want to do is what I'm doing now, which is coaching and training and personal development, really around the fields of mental toughness and those kind of things, career change. And that's what I do. So I ended up briefly going back in interiming in what I was doing. And what I do is interim for a bit, make a bunch of money, do what I'm doing now, run out of money and go, oh shit, and then go back to interiming again. And I ended up doing that for probably about 3 years or so, but I was absolutely determined that I was going to find a way, by hook or by crook, to make this work. So I was willing to go without stuff and do. And then I met Jo, and she said, look, I believe in you, and let's just give it a whirl. So that was 5 years ago. Yes, it's been challenging, but now, the last year, pre-COVID, was my best year ever. It was up 100% on the 2 years.
Amazing.
And just, not look back.
It's interesting you say about the list that you did.
Yes.
I'm aware of the list because of the article that you wrote the other week, and I shared that in the group, and it got some interesting responses. But I did something similar that in the first, after the first couple of weeks after I walked out of school, and I started normalizing a little bit and not surviving off chocolate and crisps, I started then to have these kind of pangs of, oh, maybe I should bite the bullet, maybe I should go back, maybe I should be the meek little girl that they want me to be, because I miss people and I miss this and that and the other. And my head was going, don't be ridiculous. But this bit of me was going, yeah, but so I started making a list. And every time I had one of those thoughts, my notepad came out, and it was like, write at least 3 things that are better because you are not there. And it ended up about, it's about 4 or 5 pages long. And some of them were so ridiculous that they seem unreal now. I think I've said this to you before. Like going to the toilet when I want to go to the toilet. What sort of job stops you from going to the toilet when you need to go to the loo? But that was the reality. So when I started making that list, for me, that was my trigger to, you do not ever want to go back to a state where you are so controlled and institutionalized that you don't live your life the way that you want it. And it's going to be hard and you're going to be skint, but it'll be better. So that was interesting. I want to whip back. When we came out of uni, you and I kind of took a slightly, after the first 2 years, we went on a different route. So you went BA, didn't you? And I went B.Ed. Yes. So I knew I was going into teaching. For you on the BA route, did you feel that you got, because we didn't get any career advice, did you get any advice or guidance at that stage?
No, I didn't. In fact, I don't know if you remember, I didn't complete my BA. So it was you did your 2 years, which was the HND, and then you could do 2 more to make it a BA. I didn't bother. After 2 years, I just thought, I'm done with education. I need to get out and do something different. And I was so frustrated. And I just thought, well, the way I framed it in my head at the time was, well, I'll have a 2-year head start on this bunch of people that are going to come out of the degree. Every bugger's coming out of the degree. I'm going to go and see what I can do in the real world. And I say I learned more setting up and running that business for 18 months than I did in 2 years running on the business course.
And what about career advice as you've gone into adulthood and along the way? Where do you get that from? What do you do? Are you kind of self-sufficient in that regard, that you go looking, or? Yes.
So I've always done 2 things. I guess I've always gone looking and made up my own minds, and I take on lots of different opinions. So I read quite a lot, visit blogs, all those kind of things, and I ask different people for their opinions, and then I make up my mind as to what I wanted to do. That's how I've always gone with that. In that front. And I think the other thing, going back to the making that decision, what you described in terms of the things that were good and bad, I realised that when I got made that redundant that time at 41, that was the 3rd time in my career I've been made redundant. Both on all 3 occasions, not because of poor performance or not anything wrong, just because of circumstances, organisational restructuring, recessions. And I thought, hang on a minute, my family's financial future is going to be put in jeopardy because of things beyond my control, I'd rather rise or fall by my own merits.
Yeah.
It's going to happen anyway. It's happened 3 times. So why the hell not risk doing something for me?
Yeah.
And also knowing that, ironically, because of when you're self-employed, the tax things you can do, you don't have to actually earn as much money to be as well off as you were before.
No, and that's a biggie, isn't it? I mean, it's certainly for teachers, and I would think that it applies to a lot of public sector workers as well, and a lot of people in the private sector. If you are salaried on a that's your career track and whatever, you forget that, or you don't even know that there are lots of different things that you can do legally and morally that are correct in order to reduce your tax burden and still exist a decent
have a good living
life. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, you don't even have to, you don't have to turn over, you can turn over anything. I think it's 85 grand is the VAT threshold.
Yes.
Well, unless you're in a kind of line of work a bit like I am, where some companies want you to be VAT registered, then, you don't, if you're not turning over 85 grand, you don't need to be registered.
And it's that, understanding the tax threshold. This is going to go off down a rabbit hole now, but understanding the tax threshold, so understanding your tax-free allowance, and understanding as well that you can change the way you pay your national insurance contributions.
Yeah.
Because that was when I did my tax return this year. That was like okay, that's different, because I was used to probably about, in total with pension, tax, national insurance, I was probably looking at about £2,000 a month that was going out of my gross income. And that's the panic when you go self-employed, is you kind of go, shit, I'm going to have a really big tax bill, but actually you can play canny about it.
Oh yeah, I mean, even as a VAT company now, there are things you can do so that, my tax bill this year, touch wood, the accountant's just working at the minute, should be negligible. Because you just, you pay your minimum and the rest is done through dividends, and there's your director's loan, which is all very complicated, so we'll go down that. But yeah, so in essence, what you don't need to do is earn as much money as you were doing before to have the similar level of income.
How do you start when you don't know what it is that you want?
That's a great question. For me, I can look at my experience, it's about stopping long enough to figure that out, to figure out what's important. And it was only, it took me 2.5 months. It might only take somebody else 2.5 days or 2.5 weeks, I don't know. But it's only when you actually get to stop, because like I said, I've got to 40, I'm assuming most of the people maybe listening to this watching this of a similar kind of age. You've been on that hamster wheel of life and you're running so flipping fast. And I know, my sister's a teacher, Andrea, and I know the volume of work and everything else. When do you get time to stop and actually think, and reconnecting with yourself and what's important for you is not something that just happens the next day. Not, I would say, so I think you need to stop a bit. So it's an impossible question to answer, but I think how do you go about it is learn to stop, learn to think about what's really interesting you, motivates you, what are you good at, what do people around you think, oh, I think that's about you, or I think you're good at this, or what are the qualities and things.
Did you, because a lot of, again, I mean, it's very experiential, but a lot of our group members, and certainly from my point of view, you work in a system, and you perhaps seeing this with Andrea, you work in a system where you're not de-skilled, but your sense of self-worth, perhaps your emotional intelligence about yourself, is kind of eroded over time, and you get very used to hearing no, making a suggestion and then being kind of eye rolled at, and like, that's not our way, and that kind of bullshit, let's call it what it is. So how Were you brave enough to say to people, right, what do you think about me? What do you think I can do? What am I good at from your point of view? Or did it come from you first?
A bit of both. So yes, I would listen to people. I think you make a really good point there, Sarah. So many people get pigeonholed. You know, we as human beings, we love labels.
Yeah.
I do this when I do the career coaching and the CV with people. Is, you know, people write CV in a way that allows them to be labelled and pigeonholed. And the problem with that is so many people pick, oh, you're this or you're that. And even your closest friends, you know, I wrote another article about it in terms of it's called The Enemy at the Gates, being aware of actually the negative limitations that even close family and friends can unwittingly put on you, because they bring their fears and insecurities and go, well, I don't want you to do it. So they bring those and put them on you. So yes, people get incredibly labelled. And yes, it stops you seeing what you're good at. So for me, yes, I ask people's opinions and views of them. It wasn't necessarily what am I good at, what am I bad at. A little bit of that, but I'd take it with a big pinch of salt.
Yeah.
Some of the questions were around, you know, what happens or what am I talking about when you see me come alive? What do you see as stirs my passion? What do you see as gets me up in the morning? What do you see as, you know, that kind of question? And again, with everything, it just came out to me, I refuse to be labelled now. I've just got to that point where I'm sick and tired of people saying, you're this, or you'll only get to that. No, sod off. Who are you to tell me what I can and can't achieve?
Yeah.
And then I started to deliberately surround myself and read the kind of stuff that was the opposite to what other people were saying. Because I've listened to that for the last 20 odd years. And I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to start listening to this stuff.
Yeah, I get that. Interesting you mentioned CVs, and I will, if you give me links to your stuff, there's a lot of people in the group who are asking for advice about CV writing, because for some of them they won't have written one for a very long time, but also for a lot of the teachers and the TAs in the group, and I think I said this to you last week, that they label themselves as teacher and they don't actually understand that label is a massive umbrella of a really multifaceted skill set.
Yeah.
And even if they do get to that point where they break down exactly all of those micro tasks that they do, and you know, I mean, they're becoming experts on bloody spreadsheets and data analysis and report writing and target setting and all of these things, but they're so stuck in but I'm just a teacher, that they don't know how to translate that on their CV into something that will catch the eye of somebody in the corporate world who's recruiting. They undersell themselves
massively.
So I think that's a two-pronged thing for me. Any sort of snippets of advice that you can give, but I think one of the things that I would really want to do is point group members to you, if that's something that is, you know, that's possible, because it is one of your aspects of work, isn't it?
It is, and it's something that I kind of developed when I was transitioning. So I started. And it's based on when I came back from the Caribbean, I struggled like mad to get a job, and I couldn't for the life of me figure out why. You know, I've been in PR for 5 years, got promoted every year, turned this business around, done some other stuff in a different country, came back and just hit a brick wall. And that's when I started to remodel my CV a little bit and pitch it in a different way and present myself in a different way without labels. And I've used that in terms of I've helped people since 2011 do it this way. And I've just recently, I created a course around it 4 years ago and never did anything with it. And I'm just about to relaunch it, I think, probably in September. So I'll do that. But here's what I'm going to share anyway ahead of that. I'd love to share it with people. One is, I get people to really focus on what I call their transferable assets. And there's a difference between a skill for me and a transferable asset. And the analogy I use is, do you remember when David Beckham scored that goal from halfway line? Most people do.
Yeah.
And so it took a huge amount of skill, you know, eye-foot coordination, depth, range, all the rest of it. But he never did it again. So that's not a transferable asset. What it was a transferable asset for Beckham was pinpoint passing and being able to score from free kicks in tight situations, you know, European Championships, FA Cup finals, whatever it was, because he did that thing time and time again. And that's the way I get people to unpick their careers. So we go back over the careers, we deconstruct every facet of their role, and we use the kind of STAR framework. So what was the situation? What was the task? What was the action? What did they do? What was the result? And then they start to do that. And then they start to identify all their transferable assets that were involved, or the competencies rather, involved in each of those. Then from that, we're able to work out what the transferable assets are. And that becomes the core thing. The reason that's so powerful in the CV, when you structure your CV that way, is when someone's reading your CV, they're basically asking one question: what the hell can Sarah do for me? Now, in the traditional CV, you've got to try and unpick that from everything Sarah puts down in the chronology of her stuff. That makes me work harder as a person recruiting. When you do it the way that I teach clients, two things happen. One, it makes it really obvious to the person reading the CV, wow, Sarah's got all these skills. So you're never just a teacher. What you are is a compilation of a whole range of brilliant transferable assets. Everything from, like you said, data wizard, report writing, hostage negotiator, I'd imagine, all sorts of stuff. And you can put that down. So it makes it really clear what are your transferable assets. So I don't have to. And then the other thing we do is we really work on their profile. And I refuse to have things like passionate, motivated, responsible for, because quite frankly, they don't mean jack. Responsible for something, so what? Doesn't mean you're any good at it. So I get them to write their profile in a really interesting way, which English teachers sometimes love because it's quite gets their creative juices going, and it stands out because your CV's job, and I'm talking really fast because I'm passionate and I want to get as much value over it as possible. Your CV's job is one thing and one thing only, and that's to get you an interview.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah.
But the other thing is when you do the work that I get them to do, and it's not easy because I ain't going to write this for you. You've got to do the work. I'll walk you through the process. I'll hold your hand. I'll coach you. I'll guide you. But clients have got to do the work. They get a lot more confidence because they realize, oh my God, I've been underselling myself.
Yes.
All these skills.
Yeah.
I've just been doing it with a guy who runs his own business, unfortunately struggling. And he's having to go back into the world in the food and beverage market. And he came to me with his CV, which was ropey. And we've just gone through this process over the last 3 or 4 weeks. And he's now gone, oh my God, I can't believe the difference. And the confidence I've got, I realized I've massively undersold myself. So now he's out there with a great CV and a great LinkedIn profile and a lot of confidence. So when he gets to interview, he's going to do really well.
That's really interesting because I'm a champion stalker in the nicest possible way. And I was having a look at your profile on LinkedIn the other day because you're really active on LinkedIn, and you add from a personal point of view, you add a lot of value. People interact and engage with you because what you're pitching out there is relevant. But I was really interested in the way that you'd structured your experience in terms of that kind of why you should
engage with me.
You should engage with me. And I just thought, that is a stroke of genius, because just in terms of the initial assertiveness of that, this is on you now. I'm giving you the reason to come to me.
Yes.
It's that, isn't it? And being ballsy, but in a very it's not subtle, but it's not a sort of slam in your face egotistical thing either, is it?
Yeah, I like to think it's assertive. I want people who want to work with me and who've got a problem that I can fix. If I can't fix your problem, I'm going to tell you that I'm not the right guy for that. Go and speak to this guy. They're way much better, or this lady. So I want them to know what I'm like, or know what I'm about, and what I can do and what I can't do, because I don't want to waste your time on mine. So I like to think it's assertive in that way. It gives people up front, no, he's not for me, or that's not right, I'll go somewhere else. And actually the other thing is, on LinkedIn, no one cares what I did before. The fact that I've got 20 years in the corporate world are irrelevant to the people I'm trying to talk to and attract as clients now. So who cares? Don't waste my LinkedIn space by putting what I did when I first went into PR 20 odd years ago. It's not relevant. And it's the same with a lot of your CV. A lot of people have put stuff on there that's just not relevant, or it's not positioned in a way that makes it easily understandable for the potential employer to go, that's what Sarah can do.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really helpful. I really do think that's one of the things that that people are really crying out for at the moment is how do I reshape me on paper to get my foot in the door, but also that's why I asked you about career advice, because there's so many people at the moment going, I just don't know what I can do or where I can look for the things that I'm actually really interested in. So there's lots of people interested in kind of forest school, outdoor ed, you know, very active people. And it's that, where the hell do I start with that? How do I find out what I need to do for that? And yeah,
I think it's, for me, it's just start. So start on the internet, grab your keyboard, grab your laptop, get out there, start perusing as much as you can, find as much as you can, set up a bunch of bookmarks, look around, and don't be afraid to ask. I've been amazed. You know, I wrote my book, and I literally did it by approaching every single one. So 28 business leaders that I approached, and I think overall I approached 36, 37.
That's a good conversion rate.
Yeah, so I mean, people love giving advice.
Yeah,
you know, they're happy to share. And if you come out from a humble, I mean, I got my very first job in PR because someone said you'd be good for the gift of the gab. So I thought, where the hell do I start? So I picked up Yellow Pages, and it was a lady called Jean Patella, her name was. I think she had a little Patella PR, it was called, in Ashton-under-Lyne, near where I live. And I rang her up. She said, look, I'm a one-man band. She goes, go and talk to John Williams at Mason Williams. And Mason Williams is one of the 3 biggest PR agencies in Manchester. So I rang him up. I blagged getting past his PA because I said, oh, yeah, I know John. And I rang him up and I said, look, John, you don't know me. My name's Anthony Taylor. I'm thinking about getting into PR. I have no idea what you look for or what kind of qualities and skills. Can I buy you a coffee and let me have half an hour of your time? And he said, yeah, sure, come on in. So I went into the office. We had a chat for half an hour. And at the end of it, he said, we might be recruiting in a month or so. If we are you up for an interview? So I said, yeah, absolutely. A month later, I got a call, ended up going for an interview with a bunch of other candidates, and ended up getting the job. But it just started from asking someone their advice.
Yeah.
I think, you know, so just start, put yourself out there, freebie a bit, do whatever. People are more.
And don't be afraid of hearing no either.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I hear no all the time in my line of work. And actually, I go for no. So when I'm looking to attract new clients, corporate clients, what I'm looking for is a reason for why they won't make a good client. Because I don't want to go all down this process and then go, oh no, because they say, oh, we haven't got the money. So I look at the budget thing, right? You know, go for no. Tell me, I try and disqualify them rather than try and qualify them. Saves a bunch of time.
That's interesting, because I was talking to somebody else the other day about I have a real issue with asking people for payment, and being open and upfront initially, because I'm terrified that by saying what I will charge for a certain thing, I've got over it now with the photography because I've shifted to that mindset. I've got a particular type of client that I want. They're in a particular income bracket and my prices are up front. I've got 3 packages. You pick a package, and if you're not interested in any of those, I'm not negotiating with you. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's working now. So people come in, it's all automated. They pick and choose, and then the first official contact I get is when they have picked a package and a date, and therefore all of that wrangling has gone. But there is an issue to do with asking for money, isn't there? Even though it is your work and it's what. Yeah,
and it comes down to a bunch of things. It comes down to self-esteem, and it comes down to what you feel you're worth. And funny enough, I do a talk around this. I got a keynote speech, and one of the elements is, you know, my mum was amazing. She was fantastic in terms of promoting me, saying, get out there, get off your backside, don't let people put you down, or a really encouraging woman. But with one conversation, we were driving, I was 13 or something like that time, in the car with brother and sister. And I remember her saying, we're talking about how on both sides of my family, relatively good business, or good businesses, fairly successful businesses, have both been lost by people who just run them into the ground. And I remember saying, we'll never be rich in our family. And that, coupled with growing up with who to talk about money, we don't talk about money.
Yes.
Just set this tone of, oh, I can't talk about money. To the point where when I recognized this about 2 years ago, and I ended up investing in some sales training for myself, which cost me about $6,000. Don't worry, no one else. I'm not saying you have to do that, but that's what I chose to do. But one of the things it benefits was it helped me get over this issue about money.
Yeah.
And the more, so now I'm much better about saying, look, this is the value, this is my price. And if you don't want to pay that, that's okay. I'm sure you can find somebody else.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm being upfront about it. I'm being upfront and saying, look, okay, you've got this problem. It's going to cost you X many thousands to fix it in a corporate setting, not one-to-one. That's what I'm saying. And until I've got the money, I go, well, that's okay.
That's fine. Yeah, and it's that. I guess it's kind of a little bit of a fear of missing out, isn't it? Initially, in terms of I want clients and I want them quick. So if I undercut and compete on price, then I'll get the clients in. But actually, that's not what you want in the long term. You want people to come to you regardless of price, because the quality of what you're doing is so good.
Yeah, and that comes from that self-belief. The other thing is, if you keep undercutting, it just becomes what we call a race to the bottom.
Yeah.
And then, and the other thing I realized as well is I put my prices up not long ago. And actually what I can do is I can afford to have a bit of wastage because I put my price up. So I don't need to work as hard because I'm actually getting the same income by charging more and sometimes having slightly fewer prices.
Yeah.
And the ironic thing as well is when I put my prices up, a lot of people didn't bulk.
Really?
Yeah, they're like, okay. Because as long as they know I'm giving them the perceived value, and what matters is their perceived value. So some clients go, oh, how can you charge that? I say, well, why do you think I can charge that?
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's because you're good. Well, yeah, there is that.
Training.
These are the extra value that I provide. But if that's okay, if you're not in your price bracket, we all buy cars, I guess. So there's, you've got your base value car all the way up to your Bentleys and your Ferraris. Well, I can't afford those. So I'm happy with the middle of the range one. Equally, I don't want to buy a really, really super cheap one because I can afford to pay middle of the range. And that's okay.
Yeah.
So, I'm not Ferrari's target market, neither am I Daihatsu's.
And that comes then to knowing who your target audience is, isn't it? And figuring out that sort of that model of almost, we've done it within the tutoring business, that we have actually named our ideal client. We've built this mental picture of Gail and who she is and what her income is and all those sorts of things. And it helps because then you're talking to that person when you're pitching. Can we shift?
Please,
to where you are? I think just amazing, the whole sort of mindset, resilience, mental toughness, because that is something for many of our group members, and for me, it was a big thing for me. We're bruised at best, broken at worst. There is no resilience. There is no toughness. It needs rebuilding. So astound me, please.
Well, I don't know if I can astound you. I think that's going to stretch it, but I'll do my best to help. How about that? Okay. I would say a couple of things there. One is there's always resilience. Okay. You can't go through life without building up some resilience. And I know people might feel bruised and broken, and I've been there, really been there. And, so it's possible to come back from that. You have a lot more resilience than you give yourself credit for. Okay. Not just you, but anyone else listening to that. Yeah. What really made a difference for me was finding that why. So when I took that time out to figure out what it was I wanted to do, that became the most protective factor. Viktor Frankl wrote about it in his book, Man's Search for Meaning. If anyone's looking a bit lost, start with that book. It'll be brilliant. It will make you cry, and it will give you a real leg up. Man's Search for Meaning. Or Simon Sinek's done a lot with that recently with his Find Your Why, or Start With Why, all that stuff. It's the same stuff that Frankl's talking about. Uh-huh. So when I got clear on what my purpose was and why I wanted to do what I wanted to do, then that became the most protective factor against the hardship, the doubt, the low income at first, and all the rest of it. So get clear on that, and then feed your mind. Lots of different cliches and analogies here, but the cliches for a reason. It's because they work. So your mind is like a garden. You know, it will grow whatever is planted. Now, some people might be looking at this and they've just had weeds planted by other people. You're a this, you're a that, you're not very good at this, you'll never be that, you know, all that rubbish. Just refuse to accept any of that and start filling your mind with positive stuff. So every morning I get up and I spend half an hour doing a bit of a gentle exercise, just some walking, a bit of stretching, that kind of stuff. And I'm listening to motivational reading, motivational stuff, because if I don't start off my day that, there are plenty of other people that quite happily fill it with negative thoughts about their perception of my limitations. I'm actually using sod that. I'm doing something for me now. So really be conscious of your self-talk. If you find yourself, I'm going to give you a quick CBT tool here. If you find yourself negatively ruminating, use the 3 C's, which stands for catch, challenge, and change. Catch yourself, say negative things to yourself about yourself. Challenge the evidence for that. Is this fact? Is this fiction? What am I assuming? Am I putting down on myself? And then change it. Change that narrative. You know, you'll know this as teachers. Kids are like wet cement, aren't they? Whatever lands on them makes an impression. And we are same as adults. You can reprogram your brain in terms of to be much more positive and to be able to build up that resilience. So get clear on your why. Have a goal, or try and if you can define your goals, but then set what I call smaller process goals. So say I want to lose weight, which I'm doing in a minute. You know, I want to lose a couple of stone in weight. My process goals are drink 2 liters of water a day, eat no more than 1,500 calories, and I'll try and exercise for about half an hour to 40 minutes a day every day. By breaking down that big goal, sort of having it, but then forgetting about it, and focusing on those 3 small ones every day, I know I'm going to move myself closer every day. So I weigh myself every day. Some days I've gone up a little bit, but overall the trend keeps going down. So I lose a bit and then I go up a bit. I lose a bit and I go up a bit, but I'm going downhill. I'm getting to where I want to be because I focus on those things, not on my end goal. Because when we're changing career, it looks so scary.
Yes.
How the hell can we go from this and this income level to something I'm not even quite sure what that looks like over there, and where the hell's the money going to come from? So don't focus on that. Focus on what are the daily behaviours and actions that you can do that are going to move you forward.
Okay, fantastic advice. And I need to lose weight, so I'm going to adopt your...
So yeah, just go for it. You know, it's just incrementally, and I'm not on any crash diet. I'm just doing those things, and they are just, it's working.
Do you know, I think one of my biggest issues, I was talking to a friend about this earlier on today, is I want immediate results. This is why I've never stuck at the gym. And I was a gymnast from about the age of 4 through to 16, and I trained 30 hours a week, and I was, you know, pre-national standard just, and I was so disciplined about that as a youngster. Whereas now, I go to the gym and I think, well, why haven't I got abs?
And that held me back. Yeah, and that held me back for most of my career, because what I do, I was so hell-bent on looking for the hack, looking for the shortcut. What's the quick way I can get promoted? What's the quick way I can do this? And actually what I've realised now in the last 6, 7, 8 years is embrace the suck, as the Navy SEALs say. Just do the work every single day, and it will start to come.
I think that is a fantastic mantra, isn't it? Do the work.
Just do the work. Stephen Pressfield has got a brilliant book called Do the Work, and it's a very short book about writing. It applies to anything, but a lot of it is, you know, you'll find ways to procrastinate, and you'll find amazing creative ways to procrastinate. Everything from, you know, going for walks, sex, all sorts, anything you'll do to put stuff off. We do as human beings, and it's brilliant. And he just calls it out in his fantastic book. Yeah. But there's no other way than just to do the work. So when you've got that goal, that purpose, that becomes that protective factor. You'll take the rejections, you'll take the doubt, and you'll just do the work. And now for me, I'm enjoying everything. I enjoy the rejections. That's great. I'm one rejection closer to getting a client or whatever it is. And one blog post article closer to being able to charge for that kind of stuff and whatever it is. But yeah, just do the work.
Have you done any work with NLP?
Yes, I'm an NLP coach.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, I qualified as an NLP practitioner 4 years ago.
See, I realised the other day that I actually did an NLP qualification, God, must be about 15 years ago, and I'd forgotten about it. It just become lost in it. So I need to go up into the attic and find my certificate and remind myself what it was that I was so proud of when I did that.
And that's most people do that. They forget all the things that they've done and achieved, or they just think about it in a work context. They forget that. There's things that they might do outside of work, like, I don't know, running a sports team or running the scouts or the guides or whatever it might be, that brings with them a whole bunch of skills that they can put down that makes them attractive to other people.
Fab. That's one of the things we're encouraging people to do, is get on LinkedIn and get a profile set up and start just dipping their toe in the water and being brave. But that's really helpful, not just from a group point of view, but I've been furiously writing things down, so
yeah, no problem. You're welcome.
And yeah, I will come back to you if
yeah, by all means.
All right, but you're happy? I mean, you're quite prolific in terms of publishing things, so I will share those, because a lot of what you publish on LinkedIn is very relevant to where we're at. So
yeah, I'm just writing one about how to leave the office on time every day at the minute, so that will hopefully be published tomorrow.
There is a real culture in teaching of trying to be the last one out.
Ugh.
Because if you're seen walking out of the gate at 3:30 after the children have left, that you're judged for that, working hard enough. And it's that whole thing, isn't it, of, well, nobody else's opinion of me should actually matter. So if I walk out of the building at 3:30, because it was one of the things that was on my list. I've got long-term health issues, which I manage, and they are not the thing that drives my life. But I used to have to wait until half term in order to be able to fit in a doctor's appointment to go and have a review.
It's just mad.
And that's crazy.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
And
I hate cultures. That's part of the reason I do what I do, because I'm trying to work with managers and teams, not just to make them individually mentally tough, but collectively, but make managers better, more empathetic managers, so that they don't kind of be the people like that. They say, "Oh, you can't go."
Arseholes.
It's just ridiculous. Yeah, arseholes. That's just mad, crazy. No one should be like that.
No, absolutely not.
And it's two things that stop people doing that. It's the fear of losing approval.
Yes.
And it's the fear of not being in control. Those are the two root causes of all mental stress: fear of losing approval and fear of not being in control.
And I guess you have to get back to the only person whose approval matters is your own, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Fabulous. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I hope it's been useful. I hope everyone
it has.
gets value from it.
Amazing.